November 13, 2022.
911 location of your emergency.
Something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the light, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And what's the phone number that you're calling from?
What's your phone number?
And tell me exactly what's going on.
What if I told you that in the early hours of November 13th, 2022, for young people went to sleep in a home they shared with friends, and none of them ever woke up again? What if I told you that while the rest of the world slept, a college neighborhood in Moscow, Idaho, a town so quiet that some residents never even locked their doors, became the center of one of the most chilling and complex criminal investigations in modern American history? What if I told you that the man ultimately charged with those 4 murders was not a shadowy stranger hiding in the dark corners of the internet? He was a doctoral student, a criminology student, a man who had spent years studying the psychology of crime, a man who, on paper, looked exactly like someone who was supposed to help prevent it. What if I told you that even after his arrest, even after his guilty plea, even after his sentencing, there are still questions that haunt the families, the survivors, and anyone who followed this case closely? Questions that may never be fully answered. What if I told you that the scariest part of this story is not the crime itself, but how ordinary every single moment leading up to it appeared to be? My name is not important right now, but this story, the story of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Goncalves, this story is. Because they deserve to be more than a headline. They deserve to be remembered. And the truth of what happened to them deserves to be told completely, carefully, and with the weight it carries. You are watching Dark Trail Files, and we are about to go deep. Before we go any further, if you're watching this for the first time, know that this channel is different. We do not sensationalize. We do not speculate wildly. We do not treat tragedy like entertainment. What we do is research deeply, tell stories honestly, and make sure the people at the center of every case we cover are never reduced to just a name on a screen. If that is the kind of true crime content you have been looking for, hit that subscribe button right now. Hit the notification bell, because Dark Trail Files is only going to get deeper, more detailed, and more compelling from here. Join this community of people who believe that truth matters, that justice matters, that the victims matter. Subscribe. You will not regret it. Moscow, Idaho is the kind of town that people who grew up there describe with words like peaceful, close-knit, and safe. Nestled in the rolling hills of the Palouse region in northern Idaho, it is a college town built around the University of Idaho, a place where students come to grow, to learn, to find themselves. Population roughly 25,000. Crime rates that made national lists of the safest cities in the country. A place where, for most students, the idea of serious danger felt abstract, distant, the kind of thing that happened in bigger cities and showed up as a brief story on the evening news. November 12th, 2022 was a Saturday. And on Saturdays in a college town, life moves in a familiar rhythm. Students sleep in. Groups of friends make plans. Afternoons blur into evenings. Evenings turn into late nights. Ethan Chapin was 19 years old. A freshman from Conway, Washington. He was a triplet, one of 3 siblings born at the same moment, connected to his brother and sister in a way that most of us can barely imagine. By all accounts, Ethan was warm, outgoing, the kind of young man who walked into a room and made people feel welcome. He was a member of the Sigma Chi fraternity at the University of Idaho, and that Saturday night he had traveled to King Road, a house just off campus, to be with his girlfriend, Xana Kernodle. Xana Kernodle was 20 years old, a junior from Post Falls, Idaho, studying marketing. People who knew her described her as vibrant and funny, the kind of person who had an easy confidence that made others feel comfortable. She was a member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority, and the house at 1122 King Road, a 3-story home that she shared with 4 other housemates, had become a familiar gathering place for her friends. Madison Mogen was also 21 years old. She was from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, studying marketing like Xana. Madison and her best friend, Kaylee Goncalves, had grown up together, had chosen the same university, and had ended up in the same house. The kind of friendship that goes so deep it feels like family. People close to Madison described her as someone who lit up every room, someone who made every ordinary moment feel worth celebrating. Kaylee Goncalves was 21 years old as well, also from Coeur d'Alene. She was studying marketing and had a dog named Murphy who, by one of the stranger and more painful twists of that night, was home in the house when everything happened. Kaylee had plans for the future. Big plans. She was looking ahead at graduation, at a life still wide open. She was, by every account from the people who knew and loved her, someone who made the people around her feel like they mattered. On the night of November 12th, the 4 of them went out separately in different groups, as college students on a Saturday night do. Ethan and Xana attended a party at the Sigma Chi house earlier in the evening. Madison and Kaylee went to a local bar called the Corner Club and later stopped at a food truck called Grub Truck to get something to eat. Security footage and cell phone data would later help investigators reconstruct the movements of everyone involved, and those digital breadcrumbs will become one of the most important pieces of the investigative puzzle. By the early hours of November 13th, sometime between midnight and 2 in the morning, they had all returned to the King Road house. The house that had felt like a home. The house where 2 of their housemates, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, had also gone to sleep in their own rooms on the lower levels. No one who knew them, not their friends, not their families, not their housemates, had any reason to believe that night would be any different from the dozens of Saturday nights they had all shared before. That is the part that stays with you when you follow this case. The terrifying, heartbreaking ordinariness of it. The scariest nights in history rarely announce themselves. They do not arrive with thunder or warning. They begin with normalcy, with laughter, with the quiet sounds of friends coming home and settling in for the night. And then everything changes. What you are about to hear, or have already heard, is one of the most significant pieces of audio to emerge from this case. Listen not just to the words, but to the confusion, the disorientation, the slow and terrifying process of someone realizing that what they are looking at is far beyond anything they were prepared for.
November 13, 2022.
911 location of your emergency.
Something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the light, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And what's the phone number that you're calling from?
What's your phone number?
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night, and she's not waking up.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah.
And are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around.
Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
Yeah, I'll come. Come on, but we gotta go check. No, we have to. Is it passed out?
One moment. I'm getting help started that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and how old is she?
She's 20.
20, you said?
Yes, 20. Here's one.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people.
Hey, sorry, they just gave me the phone.
Is she breathing?
Hello?
Is she breathing?
No.
Okay.
Please, talk to them, okay? I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them.
Hello.
Okay. I've already sent the ambulance and law enforcement. Stay on the line. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
Say that again. There's a police here right now.
Okay. If there's a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
We don't have one. Do you have a defibrillator? Yes, we have one.
Are you talking to the officer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay.
11:59 a.m.
At approximately 11:58 in the morning on November 13th, 2022, nearly 10 hours after the crime is believed to have taken place, the first 911 call was made from the King Road house. The call did not come from a housemate who had discovered something catastrophic. It came from a different address. It came because someone at the King Road house had called a friend. And that friend, disoriented, frightened, unable to fully understand what they were being told, called 911. The caller reported that a person was unconscious and unresponsive. The language was uncertain. The situation, over the phone, was unclear. There was no immediate report of a crime. No immediate understanding of what had happened inside that house. That gap between the reality of what had occurred and the confusion of the people trying to describe it is one of the first and most significant details in this case. It speaks to the level of shock experienced by those who encounter the scene. It speaks to how unthinkable the situation was. The caller did not yet know they were setting in motion the largest criminal investigation in Idaho state history. Police dispatch sent officers to the King Road address. What those officers would find when they arrived would change the course of that entire community, and eventually, the lives of people thousands of miles away. When officers arrived at 1122 King Road, they expected to find an unconscious student. What they found instead would leave seasoned law enforcement officers struggling to process what they were looking at. What was inside that house? When law enforcement officers arrived at 1122 King Road on the afternoon of November 13th, 2022, the initial call was being treated as a welfare check and a possible medical situation. Officers had no reason to approach the scene as a crime scene. They had no reason to believe that anything other than a medical emergency had occurred. That changed almost immediately upon entry. What officers discovered inside the King Road house was the scene of an attack that had taken place hours before. For victims, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Goncalves were found in the upper levels of the home. All four had suffered multiple stab wounds. They were found in 2 separate bedrooms. The weapon used was believed to be a fixed-blade knife of significant size, based on the nature of the injuries. That weapon was never recovered at the scene. The mood in that house shifted instantly. Officers who arrived expecting a routine call suddenly found themselves standing inside what appeared to be a major crime scene. The gravity of what they were looking at, the scale of what had happened, became apparent very quickly. Crucially, 2 other people were also in the house. Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, 2 of the other housemates, were present on the lower floors. They were alive. They were unharmed physically, but they had been in the house during the hours in which the crime is believed to have taken place. The Moscow Police Department, a relatively small department for a relatively small city, immediately recognized that this investigation was beyond the scope of what they would normally handle. Within hours, the Idaho State Police, the FBI, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives were all involved. The investigation that began that Sunday afternoon would eventually involve thousands of tips, hundreds of interviews, and one of the most intensive forensic investigations ever conducted in the state of Idaho. But in those first hours, as officers moved carefully through that house, and the scope of what they were looking at became clear, there was a feeling that settled over Moscow, Idaho, that had never been there before. A feeling of disbelief. A feeling that something had broken that could never quite be put back together the same way. Who had done this? Why? And where were they now? In the days and weeks that followed November 13th, 2022, Moscow, Idaho became a place gripped by fear. Students moved out of off-campus housing. Universities held emergency meetings about safety. Parents drove hours to pull their children from school. People who had never locked their doors before began locking them every night. The Moscow Police Department, working alongside the FBI and Idaho State Police, was overwhelmed with tips from the public. Over 14,000 tips were submitted during the investigation. Thousands of pieces of digital data were analyzed. Surveillance footage from businesses, gas stations, and traffic cameras in and around Moscow was reviewed. Cell phone records were obtained and studied. A profile of the likely suspect was being developed quietly, methodically, behind the scenes, while the public was left with very few answers. Investigators faced an unusual challenge. There was no obvious motive that presented itself immediately. There was no clear suspect in the early days. The victims had many friends and social connections, and all of those connections had to be carefully and thoroughly examined. The killer, whoever they were, had left behind limited physical evidence, but not zero evidence. One piece of evidence would prove to be the key to the entire case. A tan leather knife sheath was found near the body of one of the victims. That sheath had DNA on it. DNA from an unidentified male. That DNA profile would sit at the center of the investigation for weeks, a genetic fingerprint without a name attached to it. Investigators ran it through national databases. It matched no one in the system. But DNA was not the only thread they were pulling. Surveillance footage had captured an unusual vehicle in the area of King Road in the early hours of November 13th, 2022, a white Hyundai Elantra. Investigators put out a public appeal for information about this vehicle. They asked anyone who had seen it, anyone who had dashcam footage, anyone who had any information to come forward. That appeal generated enormous public attention, and it eventually led investigators in a direction they had been quietly moving toward already. Bryan Kohberger was 28 years old in November 2022. He had recently moved to Pullman, Washington, a city just 8 miles from Moscow, Idaho, located across the state line. He was a doctoral student in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at Washington State University. He had previously completed a master's degree in criminal justice from DeSales University in Pennsylvania. He was studying the psychology of crime, the behavior of offenders, the patterns that investigators use to catch people who commit serious offenses. Bryan Kohberger drove a white Hyundai Elantra. Through a combination of cellular data analysis, surveillance footage, and investigative work, law enforcement was able to place Kohberger's vehicle in the area of King Road multiple times in the weeks and months before the murders. Not just on the night of November 13th, but on other occasions as well. This suggested to investigators that the King Road house had not been a random target. On December 19th, 2022, just over 5 weeks after the murders, investigators obtained a sample of Kohberger's DNA through what is known as a trash pull. Investigators retrieved items discarded by Kohberger from his garbage that contained genetic material. That material was sent for rapid analysis. The results came back. The DNA on the knife sheath found at the King Road house matched Bryan Kohberger. The investigation had found its suspect. While investigators in Idaho were quietly building their case, Bryan Kohberger had already left Washington State. He was in a car, heading east across the country with his father, and law enforcement was watching every mile of that journey. Where was he going? And did he have any idea they were coming? What you are about to see is one of the most quietly unnerving pieces of footage in this entire case. A routine traffic stop, a father and son on a road trip, an officer asking standard questions, and somewhere beneath all of that complete ordinariness, a man who investigators believe had committed 4 murders just weeks before. Watch his composure. Watch his voice. Ask yourself what you see.
I am Officer Loangus. Stops being audio and video recorded. I think you know why I stopped you. You ran the red light.
What actually happened was I was stuck in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah,
so I was
behind you the whole time. Yeah. So technically you're not supposed to enter the intersection at all for that reason, because if the light turns red, then you're stuck in the intersection, and then you run the red light. So that's the reason I stopped you. Do you have your license on you?
Yep. We just get this figured out.
You what?
I'm just going to get this out for you.
Okay.
Would you explain that to me a little bit further? So in Pennsylvania, when you're stuck like in the intersection, you have to make the left. So what would the appropriate thing for me to have done?
You're not supposed to block an intersection like that in Washington, so just by you blocking the intersection, that's technically a ticketable violation, and then you're running a red light, so it's another ticketable offense. So you're not supposed to proceed into the intersection until you can go, because a lot of people do what you just did, right? Is like you're sitting in the intersection waiting, and then turns, then you're blocking, so.
Yeah, there was a little bit of confusion with speeding because someone had stopped. I wasn't sure what they were doing, and then they put on their light to turn. So I thought that maybe they were letting me go through.
Oh.
Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, like right before I made the turn, there was someone who made a right, and they didn't have their signal on, so I wasn't sure if they were just waiting.
Yeah, so I would just advise just don't enter the intersection until you can go, so you don't get stuck. Let's see.
But in that situation, the best thing to do then would be back up, and not.
I don't know if there's a best thing to do in that situation, because you're either going to back up into somebody, or you're going to run a red light. So, or you'll be sitting in an intersection. There's not really a great option there.
Yeah, I was just into the crosswalk, so where I'm from Pennsylvania, we actually don't have like crosswalks.
Oh,
so even if you're kind of slightly, there's a little bit more leeway as well. Like there are a few lines, like there's one white line and there's another one. Like there's like a certain margin from which you can actually kind of place your vehicle.
Yeah, so I know laws vary state to state, but there is a law in Washington for blocking an intersection like that, proceeding through, and you don't, when you're just stalling. I forget the actual verbiage, I can find it for you, but it's like stalling, blocking an intersection.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the law. I don't mean to.
Oh, no, yeah, I can find it for you. Yeah. One second. That looks good on a Hyundai. I don't see Pennsylvania registration like at all. Okay, let's see. Okay. So I'm not writing a ticket or anything like that today. I understand you're from Pennsylvania, but in the future, don't proceed through the intersection. You can't get stopped for that alone unless you can clear it right away. So
then basically, I understand.
You're just supposed to wait behind the white line. Drivers do it all the time, but
it never even occurred to me that was actually something wrong. But well, except for the fact that I was blocking the crosswalk, which is what I went through.
And states vary a lot from laws. Like Pennsylvania might not even have that law, but in Washington we do.
I'm actually just from a very rural area, so we just don't have crosswalks.
Oh.
Unless I visit an area where there are crosswalks, and then it's not very frequent.
Yeah.
I do apologize if I was asking you too many questions about the law. I wasn't trying to
No, not at all. Like I understand you're not from here, so if you don't, a lot of people don't know a bunch of laws. Like I only know it because this is what I do, but if you're ever curious on any more laws, just RCW, and they can be hard to read because it's in like legal language, but hope that helps.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Hello. How y'all doing? Good. Take up your driver's license real quick if I could. So he's right up on the van, man. You right up on the back of that van. You're over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay. Cool. Where you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU.
What's WSU?
University, basically. That is SWAT team area.
So I'm having a hard time reading because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University, and you're going there? Oh,
to go into Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're flying to let you drive hours.
Hours, days.
Drive, yeah. Well,
Okay.
In late December 2022, as investigators were finalizing their case and preparing to move, Bryan Kohberger and his father, Michael Kohberger, were making a cross-country road trip from Washington State to Pennsylvania, back to Kohberger's home state, where his family lived. During that drive, they were pulled over by law enforcement in Indiana for a traffic violation, a speeding infraction. The officer approached the vehicle. The interaction was recorded on bodycam. What that footage shows is a man who appears entirely composed. Bryan Kohberger, seated in the passenger seat, speaks calmly. He does not appear agitated. He does not appear nervous in any way that would stand out to an officer conducting a routine traffic stop. His father interacts with the officer naturally. The whole thing looks exactly like what it is supposed to look like, a minor inconvenience on a long road trip. Days after what investigators believed was one of the most violent crimes in Idaho state history. The man they had identified as their suspect was sitting in the passenger seat of a car, calm as a sunrise, making small talk. That question, the one that hangs in the air every time you watch that footage, is not an easy one to sit with. Did the officer have any idea who he was speaking to? Of course not. There was nothing in that interaction to suggest anything out of the ordinary. And that, perhaps more than anything else in this case, is what makes the footage so difficult to process. We tell ourselves that people who commit terrible acts look different somehow, that we would recognize them, that there would be a sign. The body cam footage from that Indiana traffic stop is a quiet but powerful argument against that belief. On December 30th, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. He was taken into custody without incident. A search of the family home was conducted. Within days, extradition proceedings began to return him to Idaho to face charges. This was the moment that many people who had followed this case for weeks had been waiting for. The first time Bryan Kohberger appeared in a courtroom. Watch the room. Watch the families. Watch him.
Oh, we got it. We took care of it. Yep. You guys.
$50,000 fine or both. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. The maximum penalty for this offense, if you were to plead guilty or be found guilty, is death or imprisonment for life.
On January 5th, 2023, Bryan Kohberger made his first court appearance in Latah County, Idaho. He was formally presented before a judge and informed of the charges against him. Kohberger was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. The burglary charge, which might seem unexpected, related to the unlawful entry of the King Road residence with the intent to commit a crime. The courtroom that day held people who had not slept properly in weeks. People whose lives had been shattered by what happened on King Road. And now the man charged with causing that devastation was standing just feet away from them. In person, in the flesh, real in a way that he had not been when he was just a name being passed around in news reports. Observers noted his demeanor. He stood calmly. His expression was largely neutral. He did not look around the room with visible emotion. He spoke when addressed. He responded to the basic procedural requirements of the hearing in a measured, controlled way. Outside the courtroom, the families of the 4 victims were beginning what would become a long, painful, and public journey through the criminal justice system. A journey that would test their endurance in ways that no family should ever have to endure. What you are about to see is rare and significant. Bethany Funk, one of the surviving housemates, was interviewed as part of the investigation. This footage gives us a window into the experience of someone who lived through one of the most unimaginable nights in recent memory, and who, for a long time, carried what she knew in painful and complex silence.
She just knocked on my door, I think, during the last. I had breakfast, and
Okay. Then what happened after that?
I just went to bed, and then I woke up and I was like half asleep, and I thought I saw like a firework or something, like it just sparkled like under my door, and then I thought I heard like something kind of fall, and then Murphy barked, but I thought people were just making, like maybe like an Ethan was here or something and knocked something over, because he's usually loud in the kitchen upstairs.
Okay. So what do you mean by you heard a firework?
It sounded like a little firework, and then there was like a spark. I went by my, like, I'm on the bottom floor.
Okay.
So it kind of looked like it came down there, but I don't know.
So is Murphy your dog?
Kaylee's dog.
Kaylee's dog?
Kaylee and her ex-boyfriend.
Okay. So you heard Murphy bark right after you heard what you thought was a firecracker?
But yeah, something like that. Like, I don't know, dogs bark at random things. And sometimes when he's happy, he'll bark.
Okay. It didn't sound like an angry growl or anything like that, just a bark?
I don't really know. I was like half asleep.
Okay.
It just sounded like a bark.
So, hear the firework, kind of see a spark underneath the door. Murphy barks. What did you hear after that?
Pretty much nothing.
That's it. Okay. And you thought maybe someone was just in the kitchen at that point?
Yeah, just like someone accidentally fell into the table or something.
Okay.
And she was like, this would be...
Do you know about what time that might have been? Do you have any idea?
4 or something. I tried to call all of them at like 4:20ish. Around that time, and no one was answering. I thought they just went to bed or something.
Okay. What happened after that?
Called me, and she said she thinks she saw someone. And I didn't know like really what to think of it, because sometimes we think we hear things a lot in the house, but it's usually just Ethan walking around. But she came, I told her to come in my room, and she sleep with me, and we could lock the door and just stay in there just in case if there was anything, and that's all I know. I fell back asleep.
You didn't hear anything else? Okay. No one else talking? Okay. Did you get to your room then? Okay. What time do you think she got in your room?
Like 4:20, 4:30.
Okay, about the same time.
Yeah.
Where's your room located to yours?
I'm the only one on the bottom floor, right by the front door.
Okay.
And then you go up the stairs, and Xana's room, and Xana's room, the kitchen, and then upstairs is mine and Kim's.
Okay. And where's your room?
Right by the kitchen.
Right by the kitchen? Okay. And did she say anything to you when she got into the room?
She said she thought she saw a man, but I didn't know what to think of it. I was like still half asleep, and I was like, I didn't know what to, I don't know. Okay. It didn't sound like I didn't hear screams, I didn't hear anything, so I didn't really know.
Okay. Okay. But obviously she didn't say anything more than she just saw someone.
No, that's all I remember.
Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen were the two housemates present at 1122 King Road on the night of November 12th and into the early morning of November 13th, 2022. Both were on the lower floors of the house. Both were physically unharmed. But the trauma of what they had lived through, the weight of knowing that something terrible happened in the same home while they slept or tried to sleep, is something that cannot be measured in visible injuries. What became known, carefully and gradually, through the investigation and the legal proceedings that followed, was that Dylan Mortensen had an encounter of sorts during that night. She had heard sounds. She had opened her bedroom door at some point in those early morning hours. What she had seen, or partially seen, had been difficult to process in the moment, in the way that the human mind will sometimes delay its full comprehension of something that does not fit into any frame of reference it has ever been given. Both Bethany and Dylan cooperated with investigators. Both were critical witnesses in building the case against Bryan Kohberger. Their testimonies, their recollections, the details they were able to provide, were woven into the foundation of the prosecution's narrative. For over 2 years, Dylan Mortensen had not spoken publicly about what happened. She had lived with the memory of that night in a private and largely invisible way. She had watched the investigation unfold. She had watched the arrest. She had watched the legal proceedings. And she had carried all of it. Sometimes the most important witnesses in a case are the ones who survived something unimaginable. And sometimes their courage is visible not in loud declarations, but in the quiet, painful act of continuing to live, to show up, and eventually, when the moment demands it, to speak. The case that seemed like it might take years to resolve was about to take a turn that stunned even the most experienced legal observers. In a courtroom in Boise, Idaho, Bryan Kohberger would make a decision that would change the direction of the entire proceeding and force the families into a moment they were not fully prepared for. What happened next? This was a significant moment in the legal proceedings, the status hearing that gave the first real signal of how this case would unfold inside the courtroom. Watch the room. Watch the process. Because the direction things were heading was about to become much clearer.
With his attorneys, Ms. Taylor, Mr. Logsdon, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings appearing on behalf of the state. This is the time set in the matter for the preliminary hearing status conference. So I am going to inquire. And Mr. Thompson, are you in agreement with that?
The state has no objection to that, Your Honor. Ms. Taylor reached out to us by email yesterday with her proposal. On reflection, the state's calendar would be better in the month of July, but we will make the end of June work if that's the court's preference. And I haven't had a chance to talk to Ms. Taylor about that. I'm sorry, I know that's last minute.
That's okay. The court's calendar is going to be better towards the end of June, early July. So would that work, Ms. Taylor, for your scheduling on your other matters?
Your Honor, yes. If we take that fourth week in June, that's actually best.
Okay. So, Mr. Kohberger, I need to speak to you for a moment then. Sir, you do understand, and Ms. Taylor, have you had enough time to speak with Ms. Taylor about your decision to waive your right to a speedy preliminary hearing?
Yes.
Do you need any additional time to do so?
No.
Then I will ask at this time, as to the 5 counts, felony counts that were charged in the criminal complaint that was filed on December 29th of 2022. Beginning Monday, June 26th at 9:00 a.m. And I will go ahead and reserve the week, so June 26th to June 30th. In the event that we need all 5 days for presentation of evidence. And just so council knows, it will begin at 9 a.m. each of those days. Is there anything further to address at this time in the case, Mr. Thompson?
Not from the state's perspective, Your Honor, no.
All right. Or Ms. Taylor?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Kohberger, then you will be remanded into custody on your same no bail at this point in time, pending further proceedings. Again, we'll send notice out to council, and we will be in recess for this morning.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The legal proceedings in the Bryan Kohberger case were lengthy, complex, and frequently moved in directions that surprised legal observers. After his extradition to Idaho, Kohberger was held without bail. A preliminary hearing was scheduled and then waived by the defense. A grand jury was ultimately convened instead, and in May 2023, that grand jury returned an indictment on all 5 charges, 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. Kohberger's legal team, led by defense attorney and Taylor, mounted a vigorous pretrial defense. They filed numerous motions challenging the evidence, challenging the investigation, and challenging the constitutionality of certain investigative techniques, including the use of investigative genetic genealogy, the process by which investigators had used public DNA databases to help narrow their search for a suspect before obtaining Kohberger's direct DNA sample. Trial was set for October 2023. Then it was delayed, then set again. The legal process moved in the way that serious capital cases in which the prosecution is seeking the death penalty, tend to move. Slowly, deliberately, with enormous procedural weight at every step. One of the significant moments in the pre-trial phase came when Kohberger's defense team moved to have the death penalty taken off the table, citing concerns about their client's ability to receive a fair trial under the pressure of a capital case. The court rejected that motion. The death penalty remained a possibility. But then, in the summer of 2025, in a development that reshaped the entire trajectory of the case, Bryan Kohberger entered a guilty plea. On May 16, 2025, Kohberger pleaded guilty to all 5 charges. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of felony burglary. In pleading guilty, he avoided the death penalty under the terms of a deal with prosecutors. His sentencing was scheduled, and the case that had been heading toward a complex, potentially lengthy trial was now moving toward a different kind of reckoning. For the families of the victims, the guilty plea was a complicated moment. It meant there would be no trial, no cross-examination, no presentation of all the evidence in a public courtroom. For some, that felt like something was being taken away, the chance for a full public accounting. For others, there was a measure of relief. No trial meant they would not have to endure weeks of detailed, painful testimony about what happened to their children. The truth, as the families expressed it in the days and weeks following the plea, was that no outcome in a courtroom was ever going to feel like enough. Nothing was going to bring their children back. The legal process was not justice in a complete sense. It was the closest approximation of accountability that the system could offer. Before we go further into the courtroom, into the impact statements, the sentencing, and the words that were spoken in that room, we need to stop. We need to step back from the investigation and the legal proceedings, and we need to remember who this is actually about. Ethan Chapin was a 19-year-old young man who was just beginning to understand who he was. He was a triplet. He was a son. He was a boyfriend. He was a friend who people described as someone who made every gathering feel warmer just by being there. He had his whole life in front of him, all the mistakes he had not yet made, all the achievements he had not yet reached, all the love he had not yet given and received. Xana Kernodle was 20 years old with a talent for building connections with people around her. She was a daughter, a sister, a girlfriend, a friend. She was studying marketing. She had professional ambitions, personal dreams, a future that she was actively and joyfully building. People who knew her spoke about her laugh, about the energy she brought into a room, about the way she made the people she loved feel seen. Madison Mogen was 21 years old and had a friendship with Kaylee Goncalves that was so deep and so long-standing it had become part of her identity. She was bright, she was social, she had a warmth that people felt as soon as they met her. She was a daughter, a sister, a best friend. She had so much ahead of her, graduations, adventures, milestones that she had talked about and looked forward to and would never get to experience. Kaylee Goncalves was 21 years old and had plans. Real, concrete, exciting plans. She was weeks away from graduating. She was preparing to move into the next chapter of her life. She had a dog named Murphy and a family who adored her and friends who described her as one of those rare people who made you feel like you were always in the right place when you were with her. She had a sister, Olivia, who loved her fiercely and who would eventually stand before a courtroom and speak for her in a way that shook everyone present. These 4 people were not just names in a news story. They were not just photographs on a memorial. They were not just victims in a legal proceeding. They were real and fully alive and beloved by the people who raised them and knew them and shared their lives with them. Long before any of this happened, there were daughters and sons and friends and students with dreams and futures and the kind of ordinary, beautiful potential that young people carry simply by virtue of being young and alive and full of possibility. This case did not just take 4 lives. It carved a permanent wound into families who will carry it forever. It changed the people who love these 4 young people in ways that can never be fully measured or understood from the outside. That is what this case is actually about. What you're about to witness is the moment this case stopped being a news story and became something deeply, irreversibly human. Bethany Funk's impact statement, read by her friend, is a testament to the particular kind of grief that comes not from losing your own life, but from surviving the loss of people you loved. Listen to every word.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be speaking on behalf of Bethany, and so, yeah, here it reads. My name is Bethany Funk, and I was roommates with Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. I not only lost some of my best friends, but I also lost a sister. Never in a million years would I have thought that something like this would have happened to my closest friends. I thought that we were going to wake up and go upstairs, see them and tell them how they had scared us and that they were going to tease us about how we were constantly scaredy cats. And make jokes about it as we would go to Taco Bell like always. But sadly, that is not what happened and what turned out to be my worst nightmare. When I first woke up that morning, I had no idea what happened. I woke up around 7 with a terrible toothache. So I called my dad, who is a dentist, and he asked what I should do. He told me to take Advil, so I did, and I went back to sleep. I was still out of it and still didn't know what happened. If I had known, I of course would have called 911 right away. I still carry so much regret and guilt for not knowing what had happened and not calling right away, even though I understand it wouldn't have changed anything, not even if the paramedics had been right outside the door. I was so frantic that morning and scared to death, not knowing what had happened. And when I made the 911 call, I couldn't even get out the words. And from then on, I don't remember a thing. It was like my brain wiped that whole memory. That was the worst day of my life. And I know it always will be. While I was still in shock, trying to process the fact that my friends were truly gone, I had been attacked by the public. I was grieving, numb, and unsure of what had happened was even real. And at the same time, I was getting flooded with death threats and hateful messages from people who did not know me at all or know the dynamic of our friendship. Social media made it so much worse, and strangers made up stories to entertain themselves. The media harassed not just me, but also my family. People showed up at our house. They called my phone, my parents' phones, other family members' phones, and we were chased while I was still trying to survive emotionally and grieve the loss of my friends. I hated and still hate that they are gone, but for some reason, I am still here and I got to live. I still think about this every day. Why me? Why did I get to live and not them? For the longest time, I could not even look at their families without feeling sick with guilt. I did not know what to say or what to do. I was terrified that my presence just made their pain worse. And I was still here when their kid, their siblings and their friends, their loved ones should have been here instead. After everything happened, I was afraid to go into my own backyard or alone in my house. I was scared that the person who did this would come for me next. I was always scared that the media would try to catch me at any moment of any day, even when I was just walking around my house. I made my parents close all the blinds during the day so no one could see me even in the slightest chance. I barely left the house, and when I did, I made sure I was never alone. I slept in my parents' room for almost a year. I made them double lock every door, set an alarm, and still check everywhere in the room just in case someone was hiding. And I still check my room every night before, and I double lock it. I have not slept through a single night since this happened. I constantly wake up in panics, terrified, someone is breaking in, or someone is here to hurt me, or I'm about to lose someone else that I love. The fear never really leaves. For a long time, I could barely get out of bed, but one day I realized I have to live for them. They did not get the chance to keep living, but I do, and I will not take that for granted. So now every day I remind myself to live for them, and everything I do it with them in mind. I am still scared to go out in public, but I force myself to do things because I know that they would want me to keep living my life to the fullest. I am beyond blessed to still be here, and I refuse to take that for granted when they did not get a chance. Our house was not just a house, it was a home. It was where we laughed till we couldn't breathe, make meals, did crafts, binge watch reality shows, played games, and spent lazy days on the couch. It was movie nights, wine nights, morning debriefs, pranks, hot chocolate, cookies, and warmth. I will cherish those memories forever, and I will not let what happened erase how special our home was or how much those memories meant to me.
The sentencing hearing for Bryan Kohberger took place in August 2025 in Boise, Idaho. And before the sentence was handed down, the courtroom was given over to the people who had been waiting the longest to speak. Impact statements in criminal cases serve a specific and important purpose. They're the moment when the people most affected by crime are given the floor. When they are allowed to face the person responsible and say, in their own words and in their own voices, what was lost, what was taken, what can never be given back. The impact statements delivered in the Kohberger case were among the most emotionally powerful moments in a case already filled with them. Family members, friends, and survivors spoke for hours. Each voice added a dimension to a loss that no single voice could fully capture. Bethany Funk, one of the surviving housemates, submitted an impact statement. Her words, read in that courtroom, spoke to the experience of someone who had lived in the same home as 4 people who were taken from this world, who had shared meals and conversations and the ordinary fabric of daily life with them, and who had survived. The complexity of that experience, the grief and the guilt and the gratitude and the pain all woven together, was present in every line. Now, the father of Madison Mogen, a man who watched his daughter grow up, who held her as a baby and watched her take her first steps and drove her to school. Imagine walking her down an aisle one day. Listen to what it sounds like when a father speaks about a child who is no longer here.
Now it's Ben Mogen, Maddie Mogen's father.
I'm Benjamin Mogen. I'm Maddie's dad. And first I just want to say thanks to all the people that helped bring this all to a close. I know it's not the resolution that everyone, wanted, but I think that that everyone worked so hard, and we really appreciate all their efforts. It was such a hard thing to go through for everybody. Maddie was my only child that I ever had. She's the only great thing I ever really did, and the only thing I was really ever proud of. And I thought we would have the rest of our lives together to be together and to know each other, and I took for granted the times, she was in college, and I thought, oh, well, we'll have the rest of our lives to do all the stuff that we're supposed to do, and she was just about done. She actually earned all of her credits for her college degree, and Karen and Scotty and I got to go and get her diploma that she actually earned, and she deserved every bit of that. And but I thought that was going to be just the beginning of a long life together, and we never got that. Karen and Scotty did such a great job raising her after Karen and I split up, and I'm so thankful for Scotty and the role that he played in her life when I wasn't able to. But we got to spend a lot of great times together, Maddie and I. She was my favorite person to go to a concert with. We got to see some fun shows together, and I told her, if there's ever a show that you want to go to, let me know, and I'll get you tickets for you and your friend, or if we want to go together, we'll make it happen. And my favorite memory with her was when the Mac Miller show sold out here in Spokane, and everyone wanted tickets, no one could get them, and on the last day before the show, they did a radio thing, and I got 4 meet and greet tickets for Maddie and her friends, and me to go and see the show, and that was her favorite artist at the time, was Mac Miller, and he's gone now too, and my little cousin Zach drove us all there that night, and he's gone too, tragically, and anyway, the last thing that she ever wrote to me was this Father's Day card, and I'm so glad I still have it. I'm just going to read what she said. It says, "Happy Father's Day. I hope you have the best day. I can't wait till we can hang out again soon. I'll be in Coeur d'Alene, 624 to 74. Hopefully we can find a time then. I loved your birthday card that you sent me, by the way. Maybe we can see a concert sometime soon. I'd love to see the gorge when it's not so smoky out. I hope you're doing well. I'm proud of how far you've come. Thank you for always encouraging me to do my best. Love you lots and lots. Love, Maddie May." She did encourage me to not just to do my best, but to live on. I went through a lot of issues with addiction and with substance abuse, and when I wasn't wanting to live anymore, she was what would keep me from just not caring anymore, and knowing that she was out there and that she was just such a beautiful person kept me alive a lot of rough moments, and I'm so glad that she was able to meet Jake. He was the only one that I actually ever got to take her to the gorge. They went and saw Watershed together, and they had a heck of a time. So I'm glad she got to. That's a really special place for me, and she always wanted to work out there with me in the summer sometime. She never got to, but at least she got to see it once with Jake. He was such a great guy. He is such a great guy, and I really wanted to see what a future with them would have looked like. I'll never be able to replace her. I wrote a bunch of stuff. I just don't know what to say right now. I just miss her so much, and I just love her more than anything. And this shouldn't have happened. And a death sentence is is one thing, when it's going to happen, and it's going to be all gentle and stuff. But, life without parole, with a building full of people that all just want you to not be around anymore, and winking at every morning, not knowing if that's the day they're going to pull your card. I mean, it's not a very nice sentence either. So, I don't know. I love you, Maddie, and I wish you were still here.
Ben Mogen, Madison's father, stood before that courtroom and spoke from a place of grief so profound it is almost impossible to describe to someone who has not experienced it. His words were not just about what his daughter meant to him. They were about what she meant to the world, about what the world was supposed to contain that it no longer does because of what happened in that house. There's something particular about the grief of a parent. It goes in a direction that human beings are not built to process. Parents are not supposed to outlive their children. That is one of the foundational assumptions that we all carry through our lives, usually without even articulating it. When that assumption is violated in the most violent way imaginable, the grief that follows cannot be contained in ordinary language. Ben Mogen tried anyway, and the courtroom listened. And then Olivia Goncalves, Kaylee's sister, the person who grew up with her, who knew her before she was anyone's headline, who loved her simply and completely, the way that siblings love each other. Her words were among the most powerful spoken in that room.
Hello, I'd like to start by thanking the court for allowing me the time and opportunity to speak today. My name is Olivia, and I'm the big sister of Kaylee Goncalves, and I was blessed to love Madison Mogen as a sister too. I'm not here today to speak in grief. I'm here to speak in truth. Because the truth is, my sister Kaylee and her best friend Maddie were not yours to take. They were not yours to study, to stalk, or to silence. They were two pieces of a whole, the perfect yin and yang. They are everything that you could never be. Loved, accepted, vibrant, accomplished, brave, and powerful. Because the truth about Kaylee and Maddie is they would have been kind to you. If you had approached them in their everyday lives, they would have given you directions, thanked you for the compliment, or awkwardly giggled to make your own words less uncomfortable for you. In a world that rejected you, they would have shown mercy. Because the truth is, I'm angry. Every day I'm angry. I'm left shouting at the inside of my own head everything I wish I could say to you. The truth about me is when I heard the news, I didn't cry. I listened for them. I promised them I would, that I would fight for them, that I would show up no matter what it cost me. I swore I'd never let them feel alone. Because you see, I've always been their heavyweight. I've always been the one to fight the battles they didn't feel ready to fight themselves. All it ever took was a call, and they knew I would handle it for them, no matter the time, no matter the cost. They could wave their white flag because they knew I would never back down, not for them. And not even death could change that. Somewhere along the line, I started to think about what I would say to them if I was given just one last chance. If I could gather enough heartbreak or love or sacrifice or whatever it took to get just one message across, what would I say? Throughout this entire process, I've written my feelings down at every moment, my wishes, my love, my denial, my anger. And as one final act of love, I'd planned to read these thoughts, even jarring and discombobulating and not even making sense. Because for me, that was true love. As bare and as naked as it could be, not laced in pretty words or dressed for the occasion, but written through bleary eyes at 2 a.m. with clenched fists, angry at this reality. My true final act of love was to continue on without them, for them. That dream to read aloud my love to them, to bring meaning through pain, was the latest blow in realizing You don't deserve it. And Kaylee and Maddie don't need it. Kaylee and Maddie have always known my love, and they would never ask me to prove it by further victimizing myself to a defendant who has shown no guilt, no remorse, no apprehension. They would say to me, "Why would you give the satisfaction of showing vulnerability now? You promised you would never back down." And for that clarity, I'm thankful. I won't stand here and give you what you want. I won't offer you tears. I won't offer you trembling. Disappointments like you thrive on pain, on fear, and on the illusion of power. And I won't feed your beast. Instead, I will call you what you are. Sociopath, psychopath, murderer. I will ask the questions that reverberate violently in my own head, so loudly that I can't think straight most any day. Some of these might be familiar, so sit up straight when I talk to you. How was your life right before you murdered my sisters? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your apartment? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this time. Why did you choose my sisters? Before making your move, did you approach my sisters? Detail what you were thinking and feeling. Before leaving their home, is there anything else you did? How does it feel to know the only thing you failed more miserably at than being a murderer is trying to be a rapper? Did you recently start shaving or manually pulling out your eyebrows? Why November 13th? Did you truly think your Amazon purchase was untraceable because you used a gift card? How do you find it enjoyable to stargaze with such a severe case of visual snow? Where is the murder weapon? The clothes you wore that night? What did you bring into the house with you? What was the second weapon you used on Kaylee? What were Kaylee's last words? Please describe in detail the level of anxiety you must have felt when you heard the Bearcat pull up to your family home on December 30th, 2022. Which do you regret more? Returning to the crime.
Olivia Goncalves stood in that courtroom and spoke for her sister. She did not simply describe her grief. She described Kaylee. She gave the courtroom and everyone watching a fuller picture of who Kaylee Goncalves actually was. The sister, the friend, the person with plans and a laugh and a dog she loved, and a family who will carry her forward for the rest of their lives. Olivia's voice in that courtroom was an act of love. It was also an act of courage. It was a refusal to let her sister be reduced to a file number or a case study or a name in a legal document. It was the insistence, fierce and full of love, that Kaylee Goncalves was real and mattered and will always matter. This was the moment the victims' voices returned to the courtroom. Not through the legal arguments, not through the forensic evidence, through the people who loved them most. This moment was a long time coming. Dylan Mortensen had not spoken publicly in the 2+ years since the night that changed her life. Until now, until this room, until this moment when she stood face to face with a man accused of committing the crime she survived. What she said matters enormously. For her, for the other survivors, and for everyone who has followed this case.
Next is Dylan Mortensen. We're asking for some accommodations for Ms. Mortensen and that she be allowed to sit in my seat.
Sure. Dylan, just take your time, all right?
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. What happened that night changed everything. Because of him, 4 beautiful, genuine, compassionate people were taken from this world for no reason. He didn't just take their lives. He took the light they carried into every room. He took away how they made everyone feel safe, loved, and full of joy. He took away the ability for me to tell them that I love them and that I'm so proud of them. He took away who they were becoming and the futures they were going to have. He took away birthdays, graduations, celebrations, and all the memories that we were supposed to make. All of it is gone. And all the people who loved them are just left to carry that weight forever. He didn't just take them from the world. He took them from me, my friends, my people who felt like my home, the people I looked up to and adored more than anyone. He took away my ability to trust the world around me. What he did shattered me in places I didn't know could break. I was barely 19 when he did this. We had just celebrated my birthday at the end of September. I should have been figuring out who I was. I should have been having the college experience and starting to establish my future. Instead, I was forced to learn how to survive the unimaginable. I couldn't be alone. I had to sleep in my mom's bed because I was too terrified to close my eyes. Terrified that if I blinked, someone might be there. I made escape plans everywhere I went. If something happens, how do I get out? What can I use to defend myself? Who can help? And then there are the panic attacks. The kind that slam into me like a tsunami out of nowhere. I can't breathe. I can't think. I can't stop shaking. All I can do is scream because the emotional pain and the grief is too much to handle. My chest feels like it's caving in. Sometimes I drop to the floor with my heart racing, convinced something is very wrong. It's far beyond anxiety. It's my body reliving everything over and over again. My nervous system never got the message that it is over, and it won't let me forget what he did to them. People call me strong. They say I'm a survivor, but they don't see what my new reality looks like. They don't see the panic attacks, the hypervigilance, the exhaustion, the way I scan every room I enter, the way I flinch at sudden sounds. They don't know how heavy it is to carry so much pain and still be expected to keep going, and that's because of him. He stole parts of me I may never get back. He took the version of me who didn't constantly ask, what if it happens again? What if next time I don't survive? He may have shattered parts of me, but I'm still putting myself back together. Piece by piece, I'm learning how to live in this new version of life. It is not easy. It hurts, but I'm still trying. Still trying, and I'm not trying just for me. I'm trying for them, my friends. About a year ago, I had a dream about them. I got to say goodbye. I told them I won't be able to see you again, so I need to tell you goodbye. They all kept asking why, and all I could say was, I can't tell you, but I have to. When I woke up, I felt shattered and heartbroken. but also strangely grateful. Like maybe in some way that dream gave us the goodbye we never got. Still, no dream can replace them, and no goodbye will ever feel finished. He is a hollow vessel, something less than human. A body without empathy, without remorse. He chose destruction. He chose evil. He feels nothing. He tried to take everything from me. My friends, my safety, my identity, my future. He took their lives, but I will continue trying to be like them, to make them proud. Living is how I honor them. Speaking today is to help me find some sort of justice for them. And I will never let him take that from me. He may have taken so much from me, but he will never get to take my voice. He will never take the memories I had with them. He will never erase the love we shared, the laughs we had, or the way they made me feel seen and whole. Those things are mine. They are sacred, and he will never touch them. I get to feel sadness. I get to feel rage. I get to feel joy even when it's hard. I get to feel love even when it hurts. I get to live. And while I will still live with this pain, at least I get to live my life. He will stay here, empty, forgotten, and powerless.
Dylan, thank you so much for your courage.
When Dylan Mortensen stood up to speak at Bryan Kohberger's sentencing, the courtroom changed. There is no other way to describe it. The energy of that room shifted. This was a young woman who had lived with the memory of November 13th, 2022 for over 2 years, who had gone through a police investigation that scrutinized her movements and her recollections, who had cooperated with prosecutors, who had watched the legal proceedings unfold from a distance, in the way that witnesses sometimes must, close enough to feel everything, far enough to have no control over any of it. And now she was here, in the same room as the man who investigators believed had walked into her home, in the early hours of Sunday morning, and done something that cannot be undone. Dylan Mortensen's statement spoke to survival, to the particular weight that comes with being the person who lived when others did not, to the way that a single night can reach forward through your life and alter everything that comes after it. Her words were not filled with rage. They were filled with something harder to carry, the quiet, exhausting, ongoing work of surviving something that should never have happened. She spoke about her friends, about who they were and what was taken, and she spoke about what it means to carry that forward. She faced him. She said what she needed to say, and she did it with a courage that the courtroom will not forget. After all the testimony, all the grief, all the words spoken in that courtroom, Bryan Kohberger was given a chance to speak. And when the moment came, he said almost nothing. No apology, no acknowledgement, nothing that the families had hoped for or needed. Why? And what did the judge say when it was finally time to hand down the sentence that would close this chapter? Throughout the entirety of the legal proceedings, from his first court appearance in January 2023 to the sentencing hearing in August 2025, Bryan Kohberger maintained a particular kind of stillness. He was not visibly emotional in court. He did not break down. He did not visibly react to the impact statements in a way that registered as remorse. When family members stood before that courtroom and described the devastation that his actions, the actions to which he had pleaded guilty, had caused, he sat with a composure that observers found difficult to interpret. At sentencing, Kohberger was given the opportunity to address the court. In many criminal cases, defendants use this moment to express remorse, to acknowledge the harm they caused, or to say something, anything, that might offer even a fragment of acknowledgement to the families in that room. Kohberger spoke briefly. He did not offer an apology. He did not directly acknowledge the families or address them with the kind of remorse that might have given them any sense of closure. His statement was largely focused on his own experience of the legal process and his belief in his own innocence. A statement that sat strangely beside his guilty plea and that the families found deeply painful. There is a particular kind of grief that comes not from the crime itself, but from the absence of accountability that sometimes follows it. When families spend years hoping that the person responsible will at least acknowledge what they did, acknowledge the real, human weight of it, and that acknowledgement does not come, it leaves a wound that the legal outcome alone cannot heal. Silence in that courtroom was its own kind of statement. The families deserved answers they were never given. They deserve an acknowledgement that never came. And they deserve to hear why. A question that may never be fully answered, because the mind that knows the full truth of what happened inside that house at 1122 King Road has chosen, so far, to keep the deepest parts of it hidden. Ask yourself this, and it is worth sitting with. Is the absence of an explanation more disturbing than any explanation could ever be? When someone can look at the faces of families destroyed by their actions and offer nothing, what does that tell us? What does that make us feel about the limits of the justice system's ability to deliver the kind of closure that human beings actually need? This is the moment. Everything that happened over 2.5 years, the investigation, the arrest, the indictment, the legal proceedings, the impact statements, the grief, all of it came down to this. The courtroom, the judge, and the sentence. Watch what happens when the word is finally spoken.
All right, does the defense have evidence to present today?
No evidence.
All right. Does defense wish to make argument today?
Runner, we do not wish to make arguments. Mr. Kohberger, along with his legal team, is prepared for the court to enter judgment.
All right, Mr. Kohberger, you have an opportunity to make a statement if you wish to. I take it you are declining.
I respectfully decline.
Well, please. All right, let me start this morning by acknowledging and thanking those that have come here today in support of their loved ones, and I appreciate your courage and your strength. And I hope that you are able to move on as best as possible. Thank counsel for the professionalism that they've exhibited throughout this case. It has been my great honor to preside in this case and to help bring, to the extent possible, some resolution and hopefully justice to this case. During the quiet morning hours of November 13, 2022, a faceless coward reached the tranquility of 6 beautiful young people and senselessly slaughtered them, 4 of them. Who committed this unspeakable evil was unknown for several weeks, but due to the killer's incompetence and outstanding police work by numerous local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, the person that slithered through that sliding glass door at 1122 King Road now stands before the world and this court unmasked. This unfathomable and senseless act of evil has caused immeasurable pain and loss. No parent should ever have to bury their child. This is the greatest tragedy that can be inflicted upon a person. Parents who took their children to college in a truck filled with moving boxes had to bring them home in hearses lined with coffins. The loss this killer inflicted was not just the death of these people's children, siblings, grandchildren, as we've heard today. It has ripped a hole in their soul, destroying a special part of their very essence. Any person who is a parent defines themselves foremost as such. It is their existence and purpose of being. and it has been stolen from these parents. None of us have experienced the loss these victims have in the unspeakable way that they have. And therefore, none of us can, nor should we, question the way in which they have handled their loss. Whether that be in private mourning, removed as far as possible from this media circus, or in front of a camera demanding retribution with the loudest megaphone. I've listened intently to the stories and pain that have been shared today, with great awe at the courage and resilience of the surviving family members of those wonderful children. I've listened also to the surviving roommates, both in person and through their friends. And I can't think of how, frankly, courageous they have been despite the hell that they have faced by uncaring people who have come up with all kinds of crazy theories about two kids simply being kids. The parents, siblings, and other family members who have spoken today are designated as victims in our legal system. But going forward, I hope that they can shed that label, as it gives too much power to the evil that condemned them to that role. They are and should be known as survivors, fighters, and foremost as witnesses to the tremendous lives of value and unbounded promise of these four young people. But those speaking today and those who did not speak, but who carry this same burden, this same loss, now carry forward the memories of these now perpetually young people, these forever children. These survivors carry the responsibility of ensuring that the voices of these children, Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, are never forgotten, and the positive impacts that they have had on so many lives are never minimized, and that the love they shared, the light that they shined onto others, is forever celebrated. As we sit here today, this case is ending, and we are now certain who committed these unspeakable acts of evil, but we don't know, and what we may never know is why. I share the desire expressed by others to understand the why. But upon reflection, it seems to me, and this is just my own opinion, that by continuing to focus on why, we continue to give Mr. Kohberger relevance. We give him agency and we give him power. The need to know what is inherently not understandable makes us dependent upon the defendant to provide us with a reason, and that gives him the spotlight, the attention, and the power he appears to crave. Yet even if I could force him to speak, which legally I cannot, how could anyone ever be assured that what he speaks is the truth? Do we really believe, after all of this, he's capable of speaking the truth or of giving up something of himself to help the very people whose lives he destroyed? Rather, I suspect the so-called reason would be dished out in enticing, self-serving, and aggrandizing untruthful bits, leaving people wanting more information, more insight, and thus enhancing even further the power he seeks to hold. Even if we could get truthful insight into his why, I suspect it would not in any way quench one's thirst for actually understanding why in the first instance.
On August 27th, 2025, Bryan Kohberger was sentenced in Boise, Idaho for the murders of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Goncalves. He received 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, one for each victim. He will never be released from prison. He will spend the rest of his natural life incarcerated, one life sentence stacked upon another, in acknowledgement of the 4 lives that were taken. The courtroom was quiet in that moment, not the quiet of peace, the quiet of finality. The quiet of people who have been through something enormous and are standing at the edge of it, not quite able to fully process that it is, in a legal sense, over. For the families, the reaction to the sentence was complex and layered. There was no celebration. There was no feeling of a wound being healed. What there was perhaps was a recognition that the legal system had done what it could, that accountability had been imposed, that Bryan Kohberger would face the structural consequences of what he had done, that for the rest of his life, every single day, he would wake up in a prison cell, while the people he had taken would remain 21, 20, and 19 years old forever. That is not justice in the truest sense, because true justice, the restoration of what was taken, is something no courtroom and no sentence can ever provide. Ethan Chapin is not coming back. Xana Kernodle is not coming back. Madison Mogen is not coming back. Kaylee Goncalves is not coming back. Nothing that happens in a courtroom changes that. But accountability matters. The sentence handed down on August 27th, 2025, said clearly and permanently, what you did was witnessed. It was documented. It was adjudicated, and you will carry the legal weight of it for as long as you live. The murders at 1122 King Road did not just shatter 4 families. They changed the way an entire college town understood itself. In the months following November 13th, 2022, Moscow, Idaho was a different place. Students left. Enrollment inquiries dropped. Parents who had been proud and excited to send their children to the University of Idaho began asking questions they had never thought to ask before. The sense of safety that had been one of the defining features of that community, the thing that made it feel like the right place to send a young person out into the world, had been challenged in a way it had never been challenged before. The investigation itself became a case study in modern forensic science and digital detective work. The use of investigative genetic genealogy, the technique that helped narrow the suspect pool before Kohberger's DNA was directly obtained, sparked a national conversation about privacy, technology, and the balance between investigative power and individual rights. Legal scholars, privacy advocates, and law enforcement officials debated what the appropriate limits of these techniques should be. Those debates are still ongoing. The case also sparked conversations across university campuses throughout the country about off-campus housing safety, about how students in rental homes can protect themselves, about the sometimes invisible vulnerabilities of the college lifestyle. Universities began re-examining their resources for students living off-campus. Housing companies began reviewing security protocols. Students began talking about safety in ways that they had not before. On a broader cultural level, the case became one of the most widely followed true crime stories in recent memory. Millions of people across the country and around the world followed every development. Social media became a complex and sometimes troubling space where speculation, misinformation, and genuine community support all existed simultaneously. Innocent people were falsely identified as suspects by online communities before Kohberger's arrest. Families and friends of the victims found themselves subjected to harassment and intrusion at the moment they were most vulnerable. The case raised questions not just about crime and justice, but about how we consume stories of tragedy, about the line between genuine public interest and something that looks uncomfortably like entertainment, about the responsibility that comes with having an enormous platform in an age when information, accurate or not, travels at extraordinary speed. What happened in that house at 1122 King Road did not just change one town. It sent a current through the entire country. It changed the way people thought about safety in places that had always felt untouchable. It changed the way people thought about the kind of person who could commit an act like this. And it changed permanently, irrevocably, the lives of every single person who loved Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Goncalves. After all of it, the investigation that lasted weeks and involved tens of thousands of tips, the arrest that shocked the country, the legal proceedings that stretched across more than 2 years, the impact statements that broke open the grief that families have been carrying in public and in private, the guilty plea, the sentence. After all of it, what remains is this. For young people who should be here or not, their absence is not an abstraction. It is felt every day by the people who love them, by parents who wake up in the morning and remember that their child will not call today, by siblings who reach for a phone to share something and feel the hollow silence where a response used to be, by friends who see something funny or beautiful or ordinary and think she would have laughed at this, and then remember, grief does not follow the timeline of a legal proceeding. The sentencing hearing does not end it. The 4 consecutive life sentences do not resolve it. Life, actual life, human life, is not structured the way a criminal case is structured. It does not have a final chapter that, once reached, allows you to close the book. The families of Ethan, Xana, Madison, and Kaylee will carry what happened to them forever. The survivors, Bethany Funk, Dylan Mortensen, and everyone else whose life was changed by November 13th, 2022, will carry it forever. Moscow, Idaho will carry it forever. And in some small way, everyone who followed this case closely will carry a piece of it too. What we owe them, the victims and the people who love them, is to remember them as people, not as characters in a crime story, not as the names attached to a horrifying headline, but as the real, complex, fully alive human beings they were before any of this happened. Ethan Chapin, who was 19 years old and had his whole life ahead of him. Xana Kernodle, who was 20 years old and building something beautiful. Madison Mogen, who was 21 years old and had a best friend she loved like a sister. Kaylee Goncalves, who was 21 years old and had plans, real plans, and a future she was ready to step into. They deserved that future. They deserved every single ordinary, imperfect, joyful, frustrating, beautiful day of the lives that were taken from them. And the least we can do, from the distance of a screen, watching a story unfold that we will never fully understand, is say their names, remember who they were, and refuse to let them be reduced to anything less. If this video moved you, challenged you, or made you see this case in a new way, then this channel is exactly where you belong. Dark Trail Files exists to go deeper, to take the cases that the world has reduced to headlines and remind everyone watching that behind every headline is a human story that deserves to be told with care, with accuracy, and with the full weight it carries. We're just getting started. The cases we have ahead of us will challenge you. They will move you. They will make you think harder and feel more deeply about the world we all share. Subscribe to Dark Trail Files right now. Hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who you think needs to hear this story. Leave a comment below. Tell us which moment in this case stayed with you the most. Because the truth matters. Justice matters. And the people at the center of every story we tell on this channel, they matter more than anything. This is Dark Trail Files. We will see you on the next trail.